how are you? I'm going to share with you some tips on how to learn a foreign language. For some context, I'm from Jamaica and I live in Argentina, so I speak both English and Spanish. So I had to learn Spanish I learned Spanish in high school when I was in Jamaica, and then since living in Argentina for 9 years, I mastered the language, not so much, but I'm now fluent in the language, and I'm going to share with you some tips on how I was able to transition from English to Spanish. Now, before I begin, I just want to say that we already know, but just to establish it, that there are three components to a language. There's the written form that includes the grammar and the vocabulary, and there's also the aspect of it where you have to listen to the language, and then the other aspect is speaking the language, which I think is the hardest. Now, the first tip, and I'm sure you've heard it before, it's that it's best when you live in the country that speaks the language. There's just something about it where, the language is just present all the time. You're forced to speak it, you're forced to listen to it. So that makes it inevitable that it will be a part of you and makes it easier for you to learn. Now, when you actually get to the country that speaks the language, it's best for you to associate with people who speak the language, whether they're natives or they're just fluent in the language. Because sometimes we tend to want to associate with our own people, speak our own language, because language is something that, it makes you feel at home even though you're not at home. And while that is good, sometimes you can do that. But for the initial stages where you really want to learn the language, you need to put yourself out there and hang out with people who speak it and speak it well. All right, we know that it's not always possible to go to a country and live there. It's not that easy. So if you're not able to do that, there are options. We live in the 21st century. We're in 2023. Things are so much easier now. So you can connect with people online. There are platforms that allow you to practice languages. I think one of them is Hi Native or Hello Talk and Tandem, where you can go on and just practice with people around the world. Another thing is that if you want to learn the basics of a language, you can also download apps. One of them is Duolingo, and I'm sure that there are others. And you can also probably do an online course if you feel like you need that extra help. And I know that Rosetta Stone has like a whole package that you can purchase to learn different languages. Who doesn't like a good movie? I'm sure you do. So you know what you can do? Learn a foreign language watching movies. I've met persons in Argentina that speak English very well, and I ask them, where did you learn? And they're like, oh no, I just watch movies. And I'm like, really? I think a good thing about movies is that it's fun, so you don't feel like you're learning, but you're actually learning. And another thing is that it's very practical language. So it's what people use on a day-to-day basis. So it'll help you if that's the purpose that you want to learn the language for. And you can always put subtitles just so you can match what you're hearing to what you're seeing. And yeah, that was one way that I actually learned. And if you don't like movies, you can watch series, and you can also just go on YouTube and watch videos. Now let's move on to another aspect that's also pretty similar to movies, and that's actually music. There's just something about music that makes information registered in your brain, and I think that's a perfect way to learn languages. And the good thing is that you can always just put the music in the background while you're cleaning, you're cooking, and you're just registering things. Probably hear a word or two, but that's still learning. And if you put the music on repeat, maybe you miss something from the get-go, but the second time around, you pick it up and you're like, wow, I'm speaking the language, I'm learning. And it doesn't seem like something like you have to be putting out too much extra effort, and it doesn't seem unfavorable or unpleasant. And of course, if you're watching the music video or whatever, you can always put subtitles to match what you're hearing to what you're seeing. Good thing about music is that it also trains your ears for when you're actually listening to foreigners speak. When you're listening to people speak the language, it's like your ears are already trained, so it grasps the information faster. And it makes more sense to the ears. Books. So you can always buy books in the language that you're learning or you want to learn. And if you're a reader, you can always read, and then the words that you don't know, you can always underline them, look them up after. The good thing is that with books is that if you're just learning, then you don't have to worry, oh, I'm just learning the language, I don't know a lot, I can't read books. You can always get books for kids which will be very simple language and very simple expressions, and they'll be very short, so you'd feel like you're going through a lot of content in a short space of time. It doesn't matter if you're 50 years old and you're learning the language, you can still use children's book. You have my permission. And another thing that you can also, another book that you should get is a dictionary. It's very good to have a dictionary when you're learning the language. It just has it all there. And you can also get other books that maybe people have compiled, and some of them will have, like, you know, divided, it will be divided up into different sections where they'll say, okay, if you're at the airport, these are the words and expressions that you will need. You can get those books as well. And talking about books, it's also good for you to get an exercise book, an empty book, where you can write down the things that you are learning. So for example, you're watching a movie, you hear a word like, oh, I would like to write that word down, I'd like to memorize it. You write down the word, put the translation for it, and you just have that book as your, you know, personal, it's like your diary, your journal. And if you can always have it around with you, it could be a little book you can just, you know, slip in your handbag. And if you're at the bank or the hospital or schools, whatever it is that you're waiting, you can just pull it out and just revise what you have. You're always on social media, so why not use it to learn the language that you're trying to learn? Probably look for pages on maybe Instagram that upload information. They probably upload like a word for the day, word of the day, or they'll give you little tips, you know, on how to learn that particular language. They'll give you little grammar and stuff like that. You can follow those pages. And also, I'm sure that TikTok has a lot of content relating to that. YouTube, not to mention YouTube has it all. So use social media to your advantage. You're always on it, so like take a few minutes out of your social media time to learn something about the language that you're trying to improve on. Now this one is a little bit tricky, and I would only advise you to use it if you're pretty advanced. Well, not pretty advanced, but if you've mastered the basics of the language. And that is to change the language of your cell phone to the language that you're trying to learn. So that way you're kind of like, you know, forced to navigate through with the language. You know, you're able to associate it, because after using the cell phone for a while, it's like you already know the route that you need to take to do a particular task. So by already knowing that, it's like you're already doing it, but at the same time too, you're associating the words in the other language to that process, if you get what I mean. Well, I think it does help. I did it when I was, you know, trying to improve my Spanish. If you live alone, this is actually a perfect tip for you, or if you have a personal space. So for example, on the TV, you could put like a little sticker with the translation of what the TV is in the other language, with your table, your fridge, whatever. And also it works for if you want, is there a phrase that you want to learn? I think that helps, because you're always just seeing these labels all over the apartment, so you're forced to like, oh, let me check, what's that again? And then of course, when you've gotten past that stage, you can refresh the labels and, you know, put things that you're currently learning. When one person teaches to learn, that's a proverb, and I think it's powerful, because I think that when you're learning something or you're trying to master a particular task or a language, it's always good to share what you already know. And no, I'm not saying that you're, after passing the first stage of the language, that you're gonna go and sign up to be a professor of the language. No, share it with people who know way less than you, people who you're comfortable with your friends, you know, your family member, your kids, whatever, with your partner. Try to teach them the things that you're learning, because that way it helps to build your confidence and it helps you to memorize. And when you're teaching something, you have to actually know it, so it forces you more to want to actually learn more and to get it right, because you have to teach it. Teacher. This one may seem a bit funny, but I think it's great. It's a great advice, and that's to learn with a child. I don't know, there's just something about talking with a child in a language that you're learning, that it makes you feel confident, and it's so clear, because children, I think, they speak clearer. They use a simple language. They don't really judge. You know, they themselves are learning the language, even though they're better at it because, you know, they were born in it and stuff. But it helps to build your confidence, and it helps you to learn in a remarkable way, actually. So if you've learned a language with a child before, just let me know. I think they should have children tutors. I would definitely sign up. Kids are also less judgmental, so you feel more comfortable learning with them. Seem a bit contradictive or counterintuitive, big words, and that is to learn another language. The more languages you know, the easier it is for you to learn other languages. For example, for me, after I learned Spanish, I found it was easier for me to understand and to learn a few things in Portuguese. And also, the other day I was just, seeing what I could learn in Italian. And I realized that some things are not that far off. So the more languages you know, the easier it is to learn other languages because all of them have the same root. So their structure or systems are pretty similar. So it gets easier and easier. And then for this segment, I'll just wrap it up and say, try to make the language present in your everyday life. Some of the examples that I gave before, like putting the stickers out, watching a movie, listening to music. Those are things that people like to do. So when you include the language in things that you like, you start to associate the language with things that you actually like. So it makes you want to learn it more, makes it fun, makes it interesting. Alright, so as we get to the end of this video, I'm just gonna share 7 quick tips of, or motivational tips as it relates to learning a language. The first one is to think in the language. When I was learning Spanish, my teachers always told me, don't think in English, think in Spanish. And I never understood, what does it mean to think in Spanish? But it's just like not translating word for word. Translate ideas and not words. Tip number 2, learn by association. When you associate an object, for example, with the word in Spanish, that will help you to remember it more, because whenever you hear the word, automatically the object comes in and you already know what the object is in English, so it's automatic process. Make the process of learning a new language fun and pleasant. Don't think of it like, oh, I have to learn this language now, oh I need to practice, because that way you will not really learn it because you just have a mind block. The other tip is to pay attention to native speakers. Now, native speakers, it's apparent how it goes. It's all clear to them, and you'll be trying to mimic them in a way so that, you will be able to be understood more, and it's training your ears to listen to them and use specific terms and expressions that they use, because each country, even though they may share the language in another country, they have their way of expressing it. So if you're gonna be in that country for a while, you'd like to imitate the things or the way they say things. Be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you will learn that language in 30 days like many YouTubers share. You will not. It takes time and it also takes effort, but I want to encourage you to celebrate your micro wins. Whenever you feel like you've overcome a particular step in the language, celebrate it and encourage yourself to keep on going. Don't be afraid to try, and don't be discouraged if they don't understand you from the get-go. Now, one of the things that really helped me was that I really tried. Sometimes I was speaking and they looked at me like, what are you saying? But I just kept on trying, and I tried to express it, I turn it whatever so that they could understand me, because that's the only way you're going to get it, if you try. So you just have to put your shame, your pride aside, and just try. You will eventually improve and be better. And now the final tip is for you to practice daily. Obviously it's hard, life happens, you just don't feel like it, and that is why I am sharing these practical tips, because if you have implemented any of the things that I just shared, it will be easier for you to practice daily. If you put the stickers up, you're gonna walk around your house every day, you're gonna see them. If while you're going to work, you can have the music on, and that will help you to hear the language. So if you practice any of these steps, it will definitely help you to learn the language and to improve it. So try to implement them if you're learning the language, and that will definitely help you. Hey guys, so this is where I end the video for today. If you're learning the language, just let me know which language you're learning, and if you have any additional tips, you can definitely put them down below. And I hope this was helpful. Bye.